Since the beginning of Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine, China has repeatedly declared its neutral position. But this neutrality more and more reads as support for Moscow. This is especially noticeable in the thesis of the peace plan which China proposes as a way to end the war. This document is in no way aimed at restoring a just peace in Europe. Its main message is the so-called respect for the legitimate concerns of all parties. Translating from clerical, Ukraine should not join NATO, because Russia calls it a threat, and the interests and appetites of the aggressor must be taken into account by the West. In addition, Beijing openly speaks of its intention to expand cooperation with Moscow.
The more turbulent the world is, the more stable the China-Russian relationship should develop. Unfortunately, attempts to persuade the world to facilitate negotiations are constantly undermined. It seems that an invisible hand is pushing to prolong and escalate the conflict, using the Ukrainian crisis to serve certain geopolitical goals.
The current level of cooperation between countries is enough to smooth out the fall of the Russian economy to some extent. Russia has already become China's raw material appendage, and this dependence will only increase. But if China decides to support the Kremlin in the war against Ukraine, the consequences could be serious, the Ukrainian defense minister stated. For example, according to Alexei Reznikov, Beijing can transmit data on Chinese-made drones that are used in the armed forces of Ukraine.
If, God forbid, China decides to enter into an alliance with Russia, their manufacturer can do a lot that will interfere with the work of our drones. Because the airscope has not been cancelled, the location of the operator is clear, and they will fight not with drones, but with operators. Alexei Reznikov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, in an interview with Liga.net.
So far, there is no official information about China's military support for Russia. Experts believe that the main deterrent is the threat of Western sanctions. The US and the EU have already announced that they will introduce serious economic restrictions against China if it decides to provide military assistance to Russia. Western leaders regularly remind that they are closely monitoring this situation.
We all agree that there should be no arms deliveries, and the Chinese government has declared that it will not deliver any either. I am relatively optimistic that we will be successful with our request in this case, but we will have to look at, and we have to be very cautious. Olaf Scholz, Federal Chancellor of Germany, in a comment for Politico.
Nevertheless, it is no longer possible to deny the very fact of cooperation between China and Russia, at least in the field of propaganda. Thus, according to a study by the German Alliance for the Defense of Democracy, during the entire Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Chinese media resources broadcast pro-Russian theses. According to experts, Beijing is now deciding how to help Russia.
Наразі важко сказати, що загалом робить Китай.
Now it is difficult to say what China is doing in general because we do not have all the information, but their rhetoric shows that Beijing has made a decision for itself to provide comprehensive support for Russia, but it is not known exactly what decision was made on the supply of weapons. There is information that the disclosure of China's plans by Western media hit these intentions quite hard, since the PRC itself planned to hide these processes. Therefore, I think they are waiting and will probably draw a line under this process when the visit to Moscow, which is announced for mid-March, take place.
The planned visit of the chairman of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, to Moscow was confirmed personally by Putin. Earlier, Xi's advisor Wang Yui, head of the office of the CPC Central Committee for Foreign Affairs, visited the capital of Russia. There, he met with Putin and with Secretary of the Federation Security Council Patrushev. Reported by Sergei Kulyas, Danilo Kobza, UATV News.